If I am at a restaurant with my husband, I do not talk to the hostess, I do not open any doors, and I do not order my own food.
I believe God wants all women to trust Him with their womb.
I did not make eye contact with the hostess. I did not talk to her. I waited until my husband came back.
The feminists, yeah, anyone, the Antichrist, anyone against Jesus.
You're just gonna stand in the lobby or whatever the space is, and you're gonna wait for your husband to come back.
I believe that submission is like the highest form of beauty for a woman.
You just let him have control. You let him take care of you.
For men, love means good sex when he wants it.
Body is not your own anymore.
Men want to adore you and love you, but when you're in your masculine energy, you don't give him any room to do that.
I want him to know that I am sorry, that he's not going to be my first.
You're just letting your husband lead and be masculine.
Man was not created for the woman, but the woman for the man.
Having children sanctifies you.
You're the whore, and you need to wake up.
I don't like the idea that motherhood is a choice.
So you're saying as a married woman, I should be willing to give up my career for my family, learn how to make food from scratch, be submissive to my husband, have one bank account, no prenup, and be trapped for life in one relationship? Yeah, that would be a healthy marriage.
Men want to be respected and women want to be loved.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, aka Silver Fox, and here on this channel I talk about classic literature, films, pop culture, and whatever I feel like talking about. And today I feel like talking about biblical submission and purity culture. I'll be going over different aspects of marriage and purity culture within the church and what current religious influencers are saying about relationships and specifically gender roles, and how I, as a Christian, don't agree with a lot of it. I'm going to take a few minutes really quick to say something about this video and my channel, but I know people hate when I spend longer than 2 seconds talking about anything except the subject of the video, so I will be putting the timestamp over here so you can skip to when this ends. Alrighty. So first off, I want to apologize for how this is edited today, and specifically for my voice and the lighting, because I have had to record this about 4 times now. I recorded the original run 3 separate times. The first time, my microphone was not on. The second time, my voice got so hoarse because I had spent like several hours right before that recording the original, and then I went to do it again, and my voice was so hoarse, I couldn't even listen to it. And then I did it a third time, and my voice was still hoarse, but I got through it. So you'll be seeing a bit of mixed clips of all of that. It's mainly going to be the third one, but if you see 1 or 2 clips from the first one where my microphone wasn't on, I'm really, really sorry. The audio isn't that bad, it's just that my microphone isn't on. You can still hear me, there's just background noise, which is annoying. But please forgive me, it's only 1 or 2 clips. Right now it is 2 in the morning. I had to wait until my parents fell asleep to finish editing this, so it is 2 a.m. So it's not light out, so sorry if the lighting's bad. It ended up being after dark every single time I had to record this, so I'm sorry for the lighting, I'm sorry for my voice. I'm a little bit hoarse, and I'm also whispering because my parents are asleep. And the angles and outfits will be changing variously throughout this video because I had to set it up over again and record it multiple times. And sorry if I'm not super full of energy. I am very tired, but I am very looking forward to this video. I think it's a really important one, so we're gonna power through. And also a quick thank you to everyone who has supported my channel. I don't want to spend 20 minutes ranting like I have in the past several videos, but I just want to say thank you so much. It means the world to me. Like, subscribes, views, the donations I've received, it means the world to me. Just 2 days ago, I got monetized, which is so awesome. I started this account, I posted my first video on June 16th, which was less than a month ago, and I'm already monetized. I just reached earlier today 7,000 subscribers, and I genuinely never expected this. And so I think that's really awesome. I know people are warning me not to get caught up in the subscribers and all that stuff, but I'm really not. Like, I think it's awesome, but it's honestly just a bonus. I was enjoying making this content when I was getting 250 views. I was so excited about that, thinking, wow, that's so many. And sitting here recording these videos, I'm having so much fun with them. I know I'm really tired today, so that's like contradictory, but like I'm still enjoying it even though I'm tired, or I wouldn't be here at 2 in the morning recording it. This is just such a fun creative outlet, and I really enjoy doing it. And I have a lot I really want to say, and so thank you for sticking around for this channel to hear what I have to say, because that truly means the world to me. Oh, I said I wasn't going to rant forever. I am so sorry. If you're watching this, thank you. If you subscribed, thank you. Even if you didn't subscribe, thank you anyway. Just if you're here watching this, thank you so much. Whether you like or subscribe or comment, or even if you don't do any of that, it still means a lot to me that you are here. So let's get into it. Hello gang, before I even get into the video today, I want to give a quick trigger warning. I will obviously be discussing aspects of misogyny, but I'll also be vaguely touching on details of marital rape, femicide, homophobia, transphobia, shaming, and teen pregnancy, because a lot of these all are very encompassed in the aspect of biblical submission and purity culture. I don't get too explicit in the details about these things, but I just wanted to put that out there because if these are topics that are very sensitive to you because they are very dark and heavy, I don't want anyone to be hurt or triggered by this video. So if you think that's something you might not be able to deal with, feel free to skip this video. Like I said, I don't really go into explicit detail on these things, but they are touched on. And so I just thought I'd put that out there. But also because this is very heavy subject matter, and I don't use substitute words like grape and stuff in this video, I have a feeling this will probably get demonetized. I will be linking my Ko-fi in the description if you want to donate to this channel. The money I'm getting from donations is going towards helping me move out of a somewhat toxic conservative household. At any point where I'm whispering in this video, it's because my parents were home and I didn't want to wake them, or I didn't want them to hear me. So if I'm talking loudly, they're not home. If I'm whispering, it's because they are home. Like my mom is home right now, that's why I'm being quiet, sorry. But even if it does get demonetized, I don't really care because this is an important subject to me. And I'm not doing this for money, I'm doing this for the love of the game. I want to start off by saying I am a Christian, I grew up in the church. I'm not making this video in any way to condemn Christianity, but to give insight as someone who's seen it from the inside, what this culture is like. I also feel as Christians, it's really our job to call out wrong and toxic behavior within the church. I think a lot of Christians are afraid of being wrongly judgmental or being gossips, and that often prevents us from taking accountability and calling out when things aren't right. If we allow toxic ideas, harmful rhetoric, and beliefs to run rampant in the church just because we don't want to be disagreeable, we allow other people to get hurt and be misled by people who claim to be Christ-like. It is really important as a Christian to hold other Christians accountable for words and behaviors that hurt others. The aim of this video is ultimately to be informative, not to be judgmental. Sorry for that disclaimer, I just thought I'd get that out of the way so now we can start the video. The phrase tradwife seems to be growing in popularity each day, and many popular Christian influencers openly talk about gender roles and submission. Many religious and trad women increasingly speak about how being with the right man will make you more feminine, which apparently just means you wear more pink and turn your brain off around them, aka just mindlessly let the man guide you.
This is all we want, right?
We're very simple.
Very simple. We want a man who acts like a man, who's manly, who takes care of things.
Leader.
I don't need you to kill an alligator with your hands, but I need to feel so feminine around you because you are so masculine that I can turn my brain off because I know you've got it. Yeah. I trust you. I trust your intellect. I trust your character. I trust that I can close my eyes and follow you blindly and I'm going to be happy about where I end up. We need masculinity. It's really important, and that's what we try to push. And we live in a time of, unfortunate new age feminism and this whole idea that women and men need to be the same and they need to compete, and it's all from the enemy. It's all lies. None of it is good for us.
So you don't want to be equal?
We're equal in God's eye. We're equal in value. We're different in role.
This seems relatively extreme to anyone outside the church, but I cannot stress how much the idea that a man should absolutely be the leader in all circumstances and a woman should be submissive has led to things like this sounding completely normal to someone living inside the religious bubble. Recently, a woman went viral for talking about how she likes to receive the princess treatment, which apparently means not being allowed to talk to anyone and letting your husband do it for you.
Let's talk about princess treatment if you're at a restaurant and how you interact with the waitstaff and the hostess. If I am at a restaurant with my husband, I do not talk to the hostess, I do not open any doors, and I do not order my own food. We didn't have a reservation, so we wanted to go up and see if it was possible for us to get in. He pulled the car up at the valet station. I stayed in the car. He got out of the car, told the valet, I'm just gonna run in and ask a question. I'm gonna leave my car here. I sat in the car while he ran in and asked them. They said, yeah, we have space for you. And then my husband said, okay, I'm gonna go get my wife. I did not make eye contact with the hostess. I did not talk to her. I waited until my husband came back. He comes back, does the exchange with her, and then we went and sat down. You're just gonna stand in the lobby or whatever the space is, and you're gonna wait for your husband to come back. You're not gonna go up to the hostess and give the reservation name. You're not gonna talk to her. It's not in any sense like you're better than the hostess. You're just letting your husband lead and be masculine. You're just letting your husband lead and letting him take care of it. Another huge part of the princess treatment is, I don't know if we specifically talked about this, but the over need to like talk and fill space. Like you don't need to talk unless you are spoken to. And then if you are spoken to and they ask, you could just say, oh, I'm just waiting for my husband, and then he'll be able to give the reservation. You can say it in a very soft and feminine way. I think they think that I'm like being, you know, oppressed or I don't know. They'll be like, what can I get you to eat? And I will just look at my husband. Like if they address me first, I will just look at my husband and let my husband order. But it's almost like they keep trying to like get me to speak. And I'm like, no, I want him to order for me. Again, you don't need to over speak, over exert yourself. You can be feminine and soft and quiet. The most elegant, lovely women are often soft spoken and don't overspeak. They're not loud. You're not going to be laughing loudly, speaking loudly, demanding the attention of the room when you're at a restaurant. You're with your husband, your boyfriend, whoever, fiance. You're speaking to him, eye contact with him. The attention is kind of on him. So anything really, you're just waiting for your husband to do it. It's just the fun part of being that princess, of being that feminine wife, and letting your husband take care of you.
She also says in another video that she even lets her husband tie her shoes for her as a part of her princess treatment.
You're just in your most feminine, like I can't open the door. I can't talk to the hostess. I don't know how to do that. But don't take that so literally where I'm saying like you have to be dumb. I'm just saying that like you just let him have control. You let him take care of you. So that's baseline. I don't really tie my shoes. He does that for me. Like,
and while even the most trad person will probably say, yeah, that one's a little weird, for the most part, the tradwife movement supports the idea of the man being the leader and the boss, and the women letting a man do everything. And pushback on this idea is met with the claims that you're actually pushing back against God, who in the fundamentalist worldview doesn't want women to have rights or autonomy, which simply is not true. But it's just so ingrained in a lot of church culture. Fundie influencers Paul and Morgan even talk about how they don't think you should deny your partner sex, and somewhat implying that marital rape is okay, or, you know, non-existent because marriage itself is taken for blanket consent. This is a topic that a lot of fundies and even evangelicals seem to believe. Paul and Morgan even talk about how they have sex with each other even when they don't want to, and that it's really difficult, and that it's not fun, but they do it anyway for the betterment of their relationship.
It's good to have sex even when you're mad at each other.
Alright. 3, wait,
It's good to have sex even when you're mad. 3,
2, 1. I think that's fair.
Yes, that's fair.
I had this conversation with some of my closer guy friends. They disagreed with me.
Yeah.
And said they don't think it is. I still stand my ground. I think that should be the goal. I agree. I think it should be done. But I think there are times to say let's hold off.
Agreed. I put mine there as well because I think the same thing, and also like it's not easy, you guys. we're not saying it's easy to have sex when you're mad at each other. It's not. There's a lot of like humility that has to come out, and you gotta like fight the enemy because the enemy's gonna like nail the.
It wasn't super easy this morning.
No, it was not. But we did it.
And it was the right thing.
And it was the right thing.
And as you can expect, it seems Morgan does it more when she doesn't want to than when Paul doesn't want to.
If one of you wants sex and the other is busy, would you interrupt or wait till later?
Oh, this is the question.
This one is close to home for us. Because if we're being honest, first year of marriage, there was just like, typically it was me, Morgan, like sexy time. Oh, Paul, I'm got other stuff on my mind. I'm whatever. And it's like you kind of miss each other, and that can become very difficult, perhaps for one spouse more than the other spouse. Like, do not deprive your spouse sex, except for a season if it's agreed upon because of prayer. Your body is not your own anymore. As long as it's consensual, then God is for it. As long as it's consensual. Me and my boyfriend were consensual. So it is so great. They love the social justice warriors. That word like overshadows God's word. Yeah. The word consensual. They love that word.
Speaking of sex, Morgan has previously stated that Paul made her cry on their wedding night by bringing out whipped cream. Correction, it was their honeymoon. I keep saying wedding night all throughout this video for some reason, but it was their honeymoon, which is different, but still weird, and still necessary to get consent for those kind of things, even on your honeymoon. Because he thought that the second they got married, everything was suddenly on the table and that they didn't need to discuss it beforehand? Really, dude? You didn't think you needed to discuss boundaries with your wife or get consent before you brought out the whipped cream?
Don't expect the sexiness and the adventuresome, crazy, awesome stuff to go from 0 to 100 right out of the gate. Realize that is going to take some time. And if I had realized that before getting married, I wouldn't have brought out the whipped cream on our honeymoon. It was a bad idea. It made Morgan cry. But in all reality, in my mind, it was, I'm finally married. Now I welcome everything in the kitchen sink into our sex life. Let's go wild. And Morgan's like,
I'm like, bro, I barely know you.
Here is a clip from Debbie Pearl, who I am under the assumption is a bit of a pariah in the fundamentalist and evangelical communities, since she co-authored a book that indirectly led to the death of 3 children. But I don't know for sure that she's a pariah, since she is still apparently actively posting online. And just as of last year, her and her husband published a 30th anniversary edition of that very same book. Here she is talking about just giving your husband sex.
The second in the list is to love your husband. Now, you need to love your husband the way he likes being loved, not the way you like being loved. Remember that when you're not in the mood, you need to remember this. For men, love means good sex when he wants it. It means quality food from your hands. It means respect and honor. This is how a man feels loved. In counseling, it is so common for young women to complain concerning having sex with their husband. They're just too tired, or they're just not in the mood, or they just don't have the hormones, or they're just too busy with their children, just every excuse. It is common for women to say concerning honoring their husband, how can I honor that jerk? Loving your husband is not about feelings. It is not even about you trying to change the way you feel. It is the thing you do because God said do it. A man that is totally satisfied sexually by his wife will not have the struggles to resist temptation that a man who has a wife that is not 100% giving all she has that she might satisfy his needs. Man was not created for the woman, but the woman for the man. You need to be that woman.
And if the name Debbie Pearl sounds familiar to you, it's because she co-wrote the book To Train Up a Child with her husband Michael Pearl. The book is quite literally a handbook to child abuse, going over details of how to hit your kid, what to hit them with, use a willow branch for this, use a branch this size for that. It goes over various aspects like pulling the hair of your infant, like the soft baby head, pulling their hair if they bite you, blanket training, leaving them on a blanket and smacking them if they try to go off the blanket, things like that. Also goes into detail about the best way to inflict the maximum amount of pain without leaving bruises, so they don't get caught. This book was particularly popular with the IBLP crowd. The most famous IBLP family that spoke about it was the Duggars. I don't think they directly endorsed this book, but I know Michelle Duggar talked about blanket training, which I don't know if the Pearls invented that, but it was at least very much popularized in their book To Train Up a Child. And she talks about blanket training her own children, meaning setting them on a blanket and smacking them. She did that with her kids. And if you want to know more about the Pearls, the Duggars, or IBLP, there are so many creators on here who have done really extensive deep dives into all of these things. I know Rachel Oates and Fundie Fridays have done a lot of videos on this, just in case that's something you want to look into. but I'm not going to go into a deep dive about all of that right now. The idea that marriage is your main goal, second only to salvation, and it should be what you're preparing your whole life for, isn't an uncommon belief amongst fundamentalist Christians and also Mormons. And I mention that because I know a lot of really popular religious influencers are Mormon, like, I'm pretty sure the Princess Treatment Lady was Mormon, and I also know Ballerina Farm and a lot of other ones. Like, that lady who makes all her food from scratch, I'll put the name up here, she's also Mormon, so there's a lot of them out there. Women especially are taught from a young age that they should work on themselves so they can be the wife they need to be for their husband. All personal growth is sought through the lens of making sure your future spouse is happy. Any personal growth you make isn't for you, but for your theoretical husband. You have to become a good woman, a good Christian, not just for yourself and your own happiness, but to make your future husband happy, so you don't lead him astray in your marriage.
This is a way that I can actually start serving my future husband even before I know him. I can be praying for him, praying for his character, praying for his safety, his relationship with God. I can actually serve him in this way. And I thought that that was such a cool thought. So since I was 13 until now, and hopefully into the future, I have been praying for my future husband. So as I've been praying these things, it's really been convicting to me, like, wow, if I am praying for these things in a future husband, what kind of woman should I be? Because a guy like this is going to be looking for a certain type of girl to come alongside him and support him and carry out this vision.
This idea of marriage being so perfect and really a necessity if you want to be fulfilled and want to see all the blessings of God can lead people to idolize marriage and long for a partner to an unhealthy degree, often resulting in people getting married way too young. Getting married between the ages of 18 and 20 is fairly popular in religious circles. My sister personally got married 2 weeks after she turned 18, and I've been to quite a few weddings at my churches that were, 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
Hi, good morning. Let's spend the day together as a 20-year-old wife. Yes, I'm introducing myself as that because it's a freaking accomplishment.
You're also taught that sex within the confines of marriage is so holy and perfect, and in a way it's an act of worship, which can make things really weird and even ritualistic for some people. For the ultra-religious people, this can make marriage actually seem more appealing because you're honoring God by getting married. Especially for the teenager who isn't having any sex at all and is experiencing those urges for the very first time. This is another thing that often leads to really young marriages happening within the church. Kids want to have sex without sinning, so they just marry the first person they can. This is also why, besides the thing of intentional dating, one reason is just because people don't want to wait, so they're like, well, I really gotta marry you now, so they rush it. But since sex is also only pure and holy within the confines of marriage, a lot of people struggle with the idea of sex even after marriage. When you are told your entire life that it's a sin, it's a sin, it's a sin, and now suddenly it's not a sin, a lot of people can't flip that switch and suddenly feel okay with doing something they've been told their entire life is sinful. And so a lot of people carry this feeling of sexual shame even into marriage and have trouble having normal sex with their spouse. They don't really know how to undo those feelings, and so they struggle with them, they live with them, they struggle with it, and it's a real burden on a lot of people. Even the most devout Christian, unflinching in their belief that purity culture just doesn't exist and it's not harmful, will tell you that they struggled with the feelings of feeling impure in their marriage because they were having sex and they didn't even know what was allowed to be done within the confines of marriage. For me personally, as a teen, I didn't really have the whole I have to get married so I can have sex problem. I had sub-zero sexual urges, and I actually found the thought of the whole act to be quite repulsive. I later learned about this magical, crazy new thing called being asexual, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things, because as a kid, I honestly fully thought everyone felt the same way I did about sex, and I couldn't understand why people were rushing into marriage for it, or why teens were getting pregnant and all this was happening. I thought, why are you guys putting sex on a pedestal? Who even cares about it that much? I truly didn't understand it in my naivete. Another aspect of teen pregnancy I didn't fully understand when I was a kid was the lack of sex education in schools. As someone who was homeschooled, I didn't even know anything about what was going on in school sex education. But kids were getting pregnant because they didn't know how to protect themselves or even what counted as real or safe sex. Some thought they were being safe when they weren't because they had no gauge of what safe sex was.
We thought you could only get pregnant one day a month.
What? Yeah, so you can have sex 30 times in a month and only get pregnant once, right?
This is a really big issue. People think ignoring sex and neglecting sex education will simply deter kids from having it. And maybe if you're asexual like me, that would work. But for the average kid, it's not going to. It's just not feasible. Like I said, I was personally never given a sex education whatsoever, and I had to learn everything from the internet, which is not the best source, and I would not recommend it, but it is all that I had at the time. I don't know if anyone else watched Reba growing up, but there's this whole episode where she becomes like a substitute teacher at her local school, and she very quickly learns that there's a don't ever mention sex whatsoever around the kids type rule, and the general policy of the school was that sex doesn't exist, and Reba was like, well, that's stupid. Because it does, and these kids definitely know it does. And there's this whole storyline about how these two students were going to run off and get married just because they wanted to have sex, and Reba talks them out of it, and it's a whole thing, and she ends up losing her job, and it's a big thing. And if you think about it, it's actually kind of a progressive episode for its time. A Christian show in the early 2000s saying, hey, you should teach sex education, and maybe you shouldn't just rush into marriage to have sex. And I'm not saying Reba was like a super progressive show. I'm sure if I went back and watched a lot of it, it wouldn't hold up. But I remember that episode, and I also remember thinking at the time, yeah, that's crazy. Like, of course you can't just pretend it doesn't exist. Of course, I didn't fully understand that this was an actual issue within schools and not just something they made up for a silly plotline on Reba. I was a very ignorant child, and I do apologize. According to the National Library of Medicine, abstinence-only curricula has been found to contain scientifically inaccurate information, distorting data on topics such as condom efficacy, and promotes gender stereotypes. In contrast, comprehensive sexuality education programs have been found to help teens delay initiation of intercourse and reduce sexual risk behavior. Abstinence-only policies violate the human rights of adolescents because they withhold potentially life-saving information on HIV and other STIs. Probably the biggest problem in purity culture is how this idea of remaining pure inadvertently creates a group of people who are obsessed with sex and sexuality. No one talks more about their sex life than a married Christian couple. No one thinks about sex more than a horny Christian teen who isn't allowed to engage in it. No one sexualizes a woman's body quite in the same way as Christians who look at the body as inherently sinful.
And actually, I thought of another confession that I just had to make. It's time for confessions here on Girl Fine. There was this really sweet couple that lived in our city. We were friends with them, but just a little more casually. And my husband, Zach, was like, hey, we should have this couple over for dinner. And I remember thinking in my head immediately like, oh, but the wife doesn't dress very modestly. If I have her over, she's probably going to wear something immodest. And then the whole dinner, we're just going to be sitting across from them. And it's going to be awkward. And I just remember thinking like, it's probably not a good idea. And I even told Zach that, like, I just don't feel comfortable. And he was pushing back against it. He was like, they're our friends. Like, we should have them over. And I was just in a place in my heart of like, I felt like I had to control the environment that I was in, that my husband was in, so that we could both walk in purity, so that we could both walk in righteousness and be faithful to each other. And the only way to do that was to manipulate and control the environment. What a weight that we put on ourselves to put ourselves in that position.
I recall something the Duggars did on their show. It's when the girls would see a woman who was dressed immodestly and they would shield their brother's eyes as they passed by so they wouldn't fall into lust, they wouldn't be tempted, they wouldn't be led astray by these women who are dressed immodestly. And I can only imagine what their version of immodesty looked like and how completely normal and very appropriate these women were probably dressed. Which, even if you're not modest, that's still like normal, but I'm saying it was definitely absolutely not worthy of shielding their brother's eyes for it, but it's something that they did all the time. They would cover their younger brother's eyes to prevent them from stumbling. This really fosters an environment where men don't even know how to look at a woman without lusting after her, because it's been ingrained in their minds that her very existence is a stumbling block. And most of these families, like the Duggars, also have someone in their family who turns out to be a sexual predator, like Josh Duggar, or they serve under predators like Bill Gothard from the IBLP, or that guy, can't remember his name, but that guy from Vision Forum who was also a predator. These are two groups that a lot of these big families, these big religious families, were involved in. And that's why I say this is the most harmful part of purity culture, because this is an environment that creates and protects predators and then blames the victims of those same predators for tempting them.
Now, Proverbs 31 speaks of an honorable, queenly woman wearing purple and scarlet, which denotes elegance, not sexually suggestive style. Get that down. Remember that. It's elegance. Just today, I saw a note from a mama stating, grown men should not demand their young girls dress modestly. They are grown men and they shouldn't lust after young girls. Whew! That is one foolish mama. Grown men are designed with a natural sexual reaction. when they see beautiful female flesh. Us ladies aren't like that, and we have to just believe it's true because it is. They must make an effort to look away, to put it out of their minds, and wish they could have a relaxed conversation without being put in a situation. It's not like they're lusting, they're just distracted. It irritates a good man to be distracted. It bugs him. It makes him angry. He doesn't like the woman that puts him in that situation. A man given to the flesh, oh, his whole thing's different with him. When he sees your young daughter, it will provoke a desire. Any mom who willingly defends her daughter's rights to be half-dressed is not a good mom, especially in this day and age of porn. I mean, we live in such a dangerous time. We all need to be careful about this. Chaste and how others perceive your purity. If others perceive you as not very chaste, then you know you've crossed the line.
When you constantly police what women wear when you're expecting them, you're obviously going to take more notice than someone who doesn't care. As a kid who grew up in a similar environment, it was always pointed out to me when women were dressed inappropriately. I noticed it a lot. I would look at a woman showing her cleavage and take notice and judge her. Same for short shorts or anything too tight or anything that falls into the realm of immodesty, I would look and judge. And I'm very embarrassed that I used to do this, and I hate that this was ever something I did, but I was taught that you should because they were sinning. When I got older and stopped caring in that way, thank goodness, shockingly enough, I stopped noticing. Sometimes I would be with my family and they would say, "Did you see how she was dressed? Did you see that outfit?" No, actually, I didn't, because it's not my business. And what a woman chooses to wear doesn't affect your life at all. Before I move on from this section, I want to say really quick that I do not ascribe to Debbie Pearl's view that young women are responsible for the lust of older men. I don't recall ever being taught that, and I've never believed it. That view is very incredibly harmful. I have really only ever been taught that you are responsible for the lust within your own age group, that as a young girl I need to be responsible for the way young boys look at me and how I treat them that could lead to them lusting after me. And that itself is still really incredibly harmful, because the way they perceive me, the things they choose to think about me, that's not on me. The Bible says to pluck out your own eye if it's causing you to stumble. It does not say blame the person that you are looking at. And putting that pressure on anyone, but especially children, is so toxic and damaging. Even now at the age of 26, I have long abandoned the idea that I am responsible for someone else lusting after me, that if I want to wear a cute outfit and it causes another man to stumble or whatever, that's somehow my fault. I don't believe that anymore. And I would never judge anyone else for the way that they dress or the way that they choose to express themselves. But still, at the age of 26, I feel myself shaming myself for how I dress, for the way I want to express myself, because it has been so ingrained in me, even from a young age, that I struggle to not feel that way. Like, logically, you want to go, that's not wrong. Emotionally, I can still feel that way. And that's why so many people carry these feelings of sexual shame even into marriage, because, like I said, it's not something that can just suddenly go away, that you can just suddenly fix. It lingers with you a lot longer than you ever expect it to. And I truly hope that anyone that has any form of religious trauma can overcome that and heal from it and not allow it to linger in your life any longer. And while I think specifically people like Debbie Pearl don't really care if the things that they're saying harm you, I do think most of the people that I talk about here don't have ill intentions. They are just ignorant. They do not realize that the things that they are saying, the ideas that they are perpetuating, are causing genuine harm in other people. But I do think we can't just excuse people's actions by saying like, oh, they were ignorant. I know I was ignorant as a child, but I believed harmful things. And especially when someone is a fully grown adult believing, perpetuating these things, we can't continue to say like, oh, well, we can't blame them. We have to take it easy on them just because they're ignorant. Like, at a certain point, you are responsible for not educating yourself. It's like Albert Camus said, the evil that is in this world almost always comes from ignorance, and good intentions may do as much harm as malevolence if they lack understanding. So while I don't think most of these people are intentionally spreading harmful ideas, they are spreading harmful ideas nonetheless, and they need to be called out for that. Like in the next few clips I'm about to show you from Maddie Pruitt, I think she is genuinely trying to tell women to value themselves and not take disrespect, but that's not what comes off. She ends up just shaming women for how they dress, for the most minuscule of things, and ends up blaming women for men treating them poorly. And I truly believe this comes from a place not of genuine malice, but just from ignorance. But nonetheless, it is incredibly harmful.
If you have been dressing a certain way or posing a certain way, I think sometimes it's not even about necessarily what we're wearing, but also what our facial expressions are. I think we can have we can pose a certain way or make a certain facial expression that can communicate a message that maybe we want to sin just to get attention, but we actually don't want because we want to find someone who will love and respect us. Like if I'm posting a picture that's making some type of seductive face, or it has some type of pose where maybe it's showing off my curves or showing off my, my figure. I got voted biggest flirt in high school. Your girl got voted biggest flirt. For the longest time, I would just blame it on my personality. Like I blamed flirting on my personality. I would say, no, I'm not a flirt. It's just my personality. That's a lie. That's not true. Okay? Because Jesus was the most loving person of all time, and he wasn't a flirt. Like, you can still love people well without flirting with them. And I think so often girls think, I'm just being nice. Like, I'm just being nice. It's not mean. I'm not flirting. I'm just being nice. It's like, no. Being nice, being kind, being godly is setting boundaries, is not only respecting yourself and your God and your body, but it's also respecting the person that you're talking to. And if we're leading someone on, if we're confusing someone, if we're causing someone to have, lustful thoughts or lustful feelings, or we're, leading them to think that we're interested in them when we're not, that's not godly, that's not good, and we shouldn't be doing it. Even if it's not hurtful for you, or even if it doesn't feel like a sin for you, if it's hurtful to someone else, if it's a stumbling block for someone else, then it's a sin. Then it's still a sin.
In this particular interview, Maddie Pruitt also talks about how her first boyfriend cheated on her, and she basically blames it on herself and says it's because she was flirtatious and dressed promiscuously. And she spends pretty much all of this hour-long podcast talking about how the way you dress, whether you dress provocatively, if you're a little flirtatious, then that will attract the wrong kind of men towards you. And so obviously if you make a face in an Instagram post, that's what she says. If you make a certain face, like obviously you're going to attract the wrong type of men. But that is such a messed up mindset, because I cannot stress how much you can be fully clothed, appropriately dressed, and still get men who are going to be total creeps towards you, because it's not you, it's them. And this is quite literally a victim blaming mentality. In this so taboo mindset around anything related to sexuality, as I said before, fills people with a heavy sense of shame, which only makes the obsession with sex more persistent. The pastor at my church said something this morning. He basically said that the thing you feel the most shame about is what you will continue to do. You will be sort of stuck in a cycle, which is oftentimes true, because you can't really address how you feel when it's so shrouded with shame you can't bear to speak it to another person. So rather than change or develop a healthy relationship with this thing, you fall into a cycle with it where you repeat that behavior. Here's an example. Morgan from Paul and Morgan talks about how she had sex before marriage, which Paul is constantly shaming her for and has made her feel she needs to apologize to him for having sex with someone else before they even met.
She's not a virgin. Is she at a different place than she was when she had sex before marriage? Is she changed? Has she learned? And real quick, some of you guys are going to say, Paul, you have no right to, Morgan does not need to ask you for forgiveness. Paul, you have no right to have Morgan, ask for forgiveness or whatever. Again, I was not holding it, as judgment over her, but at the same time, there is such a thing as asking for forgiveness. And, when you're looking to marry someone and you've, sinned in an area, first off, you better have asked for forgiveness to God. Humble yourself. Stop
no matter
living.
What the sin was, whether it was sex or whatever.
And I do think it's appropriate to ask the person that you may end up marrying for forgiveness for a sin you've committed that is probably going to affect them to some level. So if it had been reverse and I had sinned in that area, for me to be like, hey, Morgan, I just want you to know that I have had sex before marriage. I'd like to ask for your forgiveness. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Like Paul said, it was a sin that I committed that was going to affect us, our marriage, our relationship. So he absolutely deserved to know and
it was my choice to ask for his forgiveness. It's not like he was like, well, are you gonna ask me to forgive you?
Right.
That was not it. Like, it was my choice to ask for forgiveness. I decided to humble myself. I decided to lay down my pride. I decided that this guy is important to me and I want him to know that I am sorry, that he's not gonna be my first. Like,
oh, I think about that, I'm like disgusted. And like,
as you should be. I'll just be honest. Having sex outside of marriage but working in a church,
yeah, it's
if that were
gross.
If that were me, yeah, it's like, man.
Yeah, I mean,
where's the conviction of the Holy Spirit?
Exactly. And the conviction was there, but I was ignoring it, pushing it back. And I needed someone to grab hold of that voice of the Lord that was speaking to me, trying to like wake me the heck up, and like grab hold of it and like throw it in my face and be like, you're a whore and you need to wake up.
But she talks about how she was so ridden with guilt about it that she would be throwing up for hours almost every day because it was so overwhelming.
From personal experience, living in sexual sin was literally being eaten alive and destroyed by depression, by anxiety, by panic attacks. I was throwing up for 18 to 20 hours a day sometimes, literally multiple times a month, because I was so sick mentally and physically because of the crap that I was living in.
But did that stop her? No, she continued in that relationship for about 3 years. Because she felt so much shame, she didn't feel safe to tell anyone else how she felt, because she was condemning herself and she thought everyone else would do the same. So it never changed and she just lived with the guilt because she didn't know how to address it. So she lived in this relationship for years that she wasn't happy with. She was doing things every day that she felt guilty for and that she wasn't happy with herself for. But she couldn't address it and change or address how to have a healthy relationship with the way she was feeling, because she literally didn't feel like she could talk to anyone at all about it. Shame and condemnation does not edify you. It debilitates you and breaks you down. You are not growing in your life or in your walk with God by being so overwhelmed with guilt and shame on a daily basis that you can't even function. And nobody in the church seems to want to address how purity culture contributes to that. How purity culture creates shame and thus creates debilitation and a cycle that they can't get out of. And so every day you live in this feeling of being the worst person alive, basically. Because let me tell you, when you feel like you're living in sin, that is a really hard feeling to cope with. Another strange aspect of purity culture is married couples talk about how when they get together, they suddenly lose all attraction and sexual desire for their partners.
What happens if you get married and realize you are not sexually attracted to your partner?
And they come to believe that that's an attack from the enemy that they have to overcome. Maddie Pruitt and her husband give this very strange interview where they talk about looking Satan right in the eye when they, do it with each other.
That before we were married, Satan goes, how can I tempt you to be all over each other? Mm-hmm. And now that we're married, I think we see, especially in intimacy in the marriage bed, he goes, how do I keep you away from each other? Yeah. Right, one thing we could, you walk in a marriage going, we're going to want to have sex 5 times a day, every single day, every single moment. And especially as a man, I'm thinking, but it's interesting how Satan is so crafty to try and split that intimacy up.
Yep.
Once you're married.
That's so true.
And when you're dating, he goes together. Now I can't tempt you with lust with her anymore. So how do I get you off that? And we have to fight. And there's moments that we have had that, not that we didn't, but we're like, hey, we want to choose to have intimacy right now, even after this big argument, because we want to fight for this unity. And we're looking at Satan right in his eyes and going, we're fighting for what you cannot tear apart with God on our side.
Which brings me back to the strangely ritualistic aspect of it that I mentioned earlier. These people really have sex with God in mind, and God is their reason for doing it.
We view sex as one of the most beautiful things in our covenant marriage before the Lord, as something that is a gift, as something that He has given us as a blessing, as something that is so beautiful and so intimate and so intentional. And so again, the way that you're viewing it, the way that you're seeing this gift and this sacredness, but again, if the way that you view this beautiful little package and gift that the Lord has given you will highly influence the way that you view going about acting on this thing too.
And truly believe that a lack of sexual desire inside their marriage is purely an attack from Satan and nothing else.
Because it's just such a beautiful thing, and I wish more people saw like how much of a gift it is and how unifying and how much the Lord delights when we delight in this area, and how much the enemy wants us to not, and how much the enemy wants us to be like, no, this needs to be like this.
And listen, I've never been married, so maybe don't take my word for anything, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be attracted to your partner. And that sex shouldn't be a chore that you have to force yourself to do. If you're regularly having sex that you do not want to be having, that is a problem for a myriad of reasons.
Number 4, chastity is reserved for fasting and prayer, not because you just don't feel like it. There are obviously many reasons why you should not deny each other as husband and wife, but women, specifically for your husband, when you continuously deny him, you are opening up that temptation for him to go elsewhere or to look at other things, okay? You two are one, body, mind, soul, and spirit. This video applies to married people only. Love ya.
I think if you see sex as a non-negotiable, that changes things. If you view it like you need to eat and you need to drink, it's easy to say, like, now that we have kids, like, we just don't have time, I'm too tired, I do this and that. And yes, there are certain seasons where, like, you physically, like when you're postpartum, you cannot, like, you can't. Seeing it as like a non-negotiable, like, this is just something that we do together and we make time to do it, will be so helpful. And I would set yourself up too, if you're like trying to get back into the swing of things, to set it up in a way where it's like you don't let more than 48 hours go past without being intimate. So if you are only being intimate once a week, that is not enough. Like, that is not enough. And I know people are gonna argue and say like, well, that works for our marriage, and it's like, no, if you look at a 30-day week and you are only doing that 4 times in those 30 days, you are failing very, very poorly. Look how low of a number that is. And I know, I highly doubt there's any husband that is okay with a score that low in this area. So just know that it's probably going to not be as conducive. It's probably going to be really early in the morning or really late at night or in the middle of the day during a lunch break or at random times. And you're going to have to say no to some other things to say yes to this thing. And love truly covers like a multitude of sins. And like when you are physically loving on each other, it is so unifying in both the flesh and in the spiritual and like in so many different ways.
Something funny influencers love to do is talk about being single like it's a trial that you're meant to persevere through, and not really just a normal part of life. They specifically use the term season of singleness, which is something I heard all the time in the church. I'm not sure if anyone outside of Christianity says that, but it's definitely a phrase that you will hear all the time in the church. Christians love using it. And calling it a season implies that it ends and you will enter into a new season, specifically of marriage, which isn't true for everyone, because not everyone will enter into a relationship, and not everyone wants to. But they talk about it with such a heaviness, as if being single is a test from God, and the reward for passing it is a spouse. When you spend your whole life being told that marriage is a necessity that will bring you closer to God, it's no wonder people view being single with such animosity. And churches do often encourage people to focus on strengthening their relationship with God and not finding a partner during this season, because once you do get married, you won't have as much time to give to the Lord now that you have a partner. But this still carries the heavy implications that it is a season and marriage is the light at the end of the tunnel. They also encourage you to focus on God, because if you're not already strong in your walk with God before you get married, that it can cause problems within your marriage. So when they tell you to focus on yourself and strengthen your walk with God before marriage, it is specifically because it is the phase before marriage, and you're doing it so you can get married. They often try to deny that they look down on being single, while also talking about being single like it's a sin to be overcome.
Is my desire for this spouse wrong? Like, why do I feel it so deeply? And I'm seeing those weddings online and I'm like, something is crying out. It's biblical. Your desire is biblical, but know that it doesn't fully complete. Singleness is that test of what's the idol on your heart. Yeah. You're passing a test every single day. Although your desire is biblical and godly, it's in you. It's a test to, do you want that more than you want me? Do you want the gift more than you want the person, the God that is so good giving you that gift? And if you don't pass that test, you're going to continually fail in marriage because you're going to try and find it in that spouse. So you're in a test right now. What is on the throne of my heart?
I'm sorry if I'm hoarse and tired, and I'm sorry if I'm really awkward talking about this subject. This maybe isn't something I would normally make a whole video on because I'm very awkward. I'm not used to talking about sex and things like that, so plainly. And it's also a sensitive topic that a lot of people have made much better videos on. But I feel with the recent election and how it has emboldened people to double down on their backwards worldviews, it's become really important for everyone with a voice to use it. These people, with more boldness and backing than they've had in America in probably decades, have grown louder and louder about how they believe a woman's place is under the thumb of a man. And women who aim to be tradwives often agree and gleefully sign away their own rights. When people say the two become one, they mean the woman becomes part of the man, and never the other way around. That's why she takes his name. She gives up a piece of her own identity to him. But the man never does such a thing. His identity remains intact. Even in my own family, I told my sister once that should I ever get married, I don't know if I'm going to take the man's last name. This was met with both shock and confusion, as she didn't seem to think that was something I could do, as if that wasn't actually a viable option. She thought I had to take his last name. But why? Why is his lineage more important than mine? And besides, I'm never personally having kids, so this whole conversation of passing the last names down to the kids is moot in my circumstance. And it's also moot in a lot of other people's circumstances. There are plenty of people who don't want to have kids, even though they've been told their whole lives they have to. And even for those who do want to have kids, why shouldn't a woman get to pass the name she's had her whole life down to her children? Why does only the man get the privilege to do that? This brings me to another aspect of marriage culture. Some of you may be familiar with the Quiverfull movement. The most popular family that promoted this was the Duggars and their 19 kids. The idea is that you don't use any form of birth control and just leave however many kids you have up to God. Of course, ironically, if God says 0, you actually have to circumvent that and still try your darndest to get pregnant. And if that fails, I guess just adopt. And now listen, I am not against adoption. I am not coming for it. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I honestly think we need to work on improving the adoption systems in America so kids don't just fall victim to the system. But I think it's very ironic that these people who are all about whatever number God wants until he blesses you with a barren womb and suddenly it's about how many you want. The lengths people go through to get pregnant under the Quiverfull movement is in direct contradiction with the supposed reason for it. Truly, these people just want as many kids as possible and want to force the same fate upon you. Because they will definitely shame you into having kids and convince you that you were disobeying God if you were not having children. And even if you do have children, if you're not having a bunch of them, you're still disobeying God somehow.
I believe God wants all women to trust him with their womb. Now that means that I give everything to God. There is no trying to get pregnant, no not trying to get pregnant, no prevention, no sterilization, no tracking days, nothing. And I believe the Bible fits into that completely.
And even those who aren't necessarily Quiverfull still fully support the idea that everyone should have and want kids and will definitely pressure you into it.
Motherhood is kind of necessary. You have your priorities wrong. If you think that being a mother is something that is a choice, in the sense that you could do it, you could take on this massive burden and you could take on the massive responsibility of another person's life, or you could just continue to live for yourself and travel and party it up and do all of these things that I think are not what life is for, are not what life is truly about, then you will say that, well, maybe you shouldn't be a parent. Maybe you shouldn't be a mother. I believe, though, that motherhood is what life is for.
I've been telling my mom since I was a small child that I absolutely do not want children, and I've never wavered on that ever. And even still, at 26, she talks about my future kids and says, well, if you change your mind one day. And I'm pretty sure if ever since I was old enough to understand what having kids meant, I decided I absolutely did not want them, and I have never once wavered in that belief, I'm probably not going to change my mind. The term for people who believe in reproduction at any cost is pro-natalist. Quiverfull specifically do it because they believe it's an instruction from God, but there are plenty of people who aren't doing it for religious reasons. So, all Quiverfull people are pro-natalist, but not all pro-natalists are Quiverfull, because Quiverfull do it because of religious reasons, and pro-natalists just believe that you should be having a lot of kids. There was that one atheist pro-natalist couple who got a whole article written about them a while back, and one thing they made very clear in it is that they don't really value the quality of life of their children, only that the kids exist. If I remember correctly, the husband even hid one of his kids in front of the journalist who was writing this article about them, which makes you wonder just how much he does when there's no one looking. But this is unfortunately common amongst big families because their priority is giving birth, not raising people. Karissa Collins, a fundie influencer who has 11 kids now. I think she has a lot of kids. I think it's 11. She talks about how she continues to have children despite her many issues with pregnancy, including miscarriages and almost dying. She actively encourages others to do the same, giving women who are concerned about their own health the advice that they should just ignore their doctors or their spouse or anyone in their life who is advising them against it and just get pregnant anyway. She has even said that she's okay with dying in childbirth because she truly believes it's her job to continue to have kids at any cost.
Like I said, pastors kept telling him, yes, you need to prevent all this. So he's hearing the pastor's voice, and I'm telling him to listen to the Lord's voice. Look at the Bible and tell me where it approves. Everyone says it doesn't tell you that you can't stop having children. Okay, well, show me where it says you can.
Of course, she also says that she's not actively trying to get pregnant, but leaving the number up to God. And I'm sorry, but you do not have 11 kids without actively trying to get pregnant. That is not something that just oopsie daisy happens. Like, you're trying to have kids. And you can say that. You can say you're trying.
Because I will not partake in the prevention. Read Onan in the Bible. There are two different interpretations of Onan. In my opinion, it is very clear. Onan was killed for pulling out and spilling his seed. That is what pull out is. It's spilling your seed. And if God had a baby for you in that moment, you are preventing, not allowing that baby to come into existence. And I believe that is not that much different than abortion. Now, abortion, you're intentionally killing a child that's already alive, but in pull out, you're intentionally killing the possibility of God giving a child.
She also implied that women who have problems in pregnancy or die in childbirth must not have been close enough to God.
But God does the impossible. So I don't care how many C-sections it is. If God puts a baby in your womb, I believe God will bring that baby to fruition. Now, people will say, what about the women whose babies died? What about the women who lost their children in C-section? What about the women that died? I cannot tell you if they trusted God. I cannot tell you if they gave it to the Lord. I cannot tell you if that was God's will or not.
She also believes her own miscarriage was caused by a lack of faith in God because she hadn't given him control of her womb. But she also thinks if she dies in childbirth, it's God's will, and that if she miscarries, it's God's will. But also it won't happen if she trusts in God. But also it will happen anyway, even if you trust in him, if it's his will. But if you just believe more, it wouldn't have happened. So, if something bad happens, it's always your fault, but it's also God's will. She also talks about how she never has enough resources for her kids, nor does she have enough time, talking about how she only gives them one-on-one time on their birthdays.
Like everyone says, fine, have 10 kids as long as you can provide for them. Well, I never could. Ever.
So if she doesn't have time for them, who's raising her kids? Well, her other kids are raising her kids. A big problem present in large families is the parentification of the older children. This is when the older siblings are forced to raise the younger siblings. They have no choice in the matter. They just have this kid thrust upon them, usually multiple kids that they have full responsibility for at a very young age and without their consent. You can even see in her pregnancy announcement videos that her oldest children were unhappy to find out that she would be bringing yet another child into their family that they had to take care of. And this is also a common thing anytime a large family announces another child, because the older siblings know they will end up raising them. And I'm not going to play any of these clips for you because I'm not about to post kids online and exploit them even though their parents are more than willing. But those clips are out there.
I was very gentle until I had kids. I am not an angry person. I was not angry until I had kids. I am not a selfish person until I had kids. As I have children, I'm starting to realize how sinful I am, how selfish I am, how angry I can get. Well, we cannot be sanctified until those things are tested. So it is absolutely true that having children sanctifies you.
And you know, whenever you think about it, in a culture where it's really about never denying your spouse, particularly your husband, sex, leaving the amount of kids up to God is really about leaving the amount of kids up to your husband. Another way in which he has control over a woman is by, yes, controlling her womb. A lot of people are going to get mad at me for this, but in a relationship where you're taught not to deny your husband sex and not to use birth control, your husband gets to be in control of how many kids you have. Why would you not want to have a very real say in how many times you get pregnant, if at all? Personally, for me, I think people who have kids are brave because it's really freaking scary to me, and I don't want anything to do with it. The idea of pregnancy is so terrifying for me, and I think people who go through that are really strong people. I'm not a strong person, though. I don't want to do that. And so please don't think when I'm talking about this, I'm saying, how could anyone ever have kids or want to have kids? I'm saying I personally don't want to. And I think telling me that I'm a bad Christian, that I'm disobeying God because my path is different than yours is just fundamentally incorrect. Fundie incorrect. And I also want to take a moment to clarify that not every Christian abides by these rules, including myself. As I previously said, I don't plan to have kids, I don't plan on taking the man's name, I don't even know if I'll ever get married. I mean, at 26, I'm kind of already an old hag that's overdue for marriage in most religious circles anyway. Everyone I know thought I would be married by now, and even just a couple of years ago I had my family saying, well, maybe this time next year you'll be married, maybe this time next year you'll be married. And it wasn't. But I don't like doing things just because people told me this is the way to do it, especially when it's not even backed up by scripture. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you have to get married. And there's even verses that state specifically that it is better to remain single. But a certain group of people love to ignore that and push their own personal perspectives on marriage. For a lot of people, it's really not about what's biblical, but about what they want individually. Which is fine if you're doing that for yourself and not telling other people that they have to do what you want individually. If for your individual life you want a crap ton of kids, go ahead, pop them out. That's a rude way to say it. But if you want a lot of kids, have a lot of kids. That doesn't mean other people also have to have a lot of kids. I could go on a whole other tangent about the twisting of Bible verses and such in order to support a lot of these views. But I'm trying not to make this video too long today because I'm trying to make shorter videos. I failed at that one. Yeah, and I'm so hoarse right now. I'm so hoarse. So forgive me if I overlook some things. I just want the people watching this to know that not all Christians ascribe to a patriarchal system that's enforced in a lot of churches. And there are a lot of churches and individual Christians like myself who do not believe this, so just make sure you find the right group of people that share your views. And the influencers I reference in this video aren't necessarily a picture of the average Christian. They're more extreme in a lot of ways, but their views can influence and trickle down into less extreme versions among the general population. Kind of like outlandish runway fashion that inspires the more tame everyday outfits people wear. You know, it's kind of like that scene in The Devil Wears Prada. It's not just blue, it's cerulean. But these people, even if not representative of the average Christian, still have influence, so I'm going to call them out, especially when they use the influence to convince people that a holy marriage is one where the man doesn't respect the woman.
It's nice knowing that she can't go anywhere.
That feminists are the Antichrist.
People say all the time that like Christianity is patriarchal. Yeah. that it's like that God is against women and that he doesn't love women and that that's why he appointed men to be the leaders.
Who says this? The feminists?
The feminists. Yeah. Anyone, the Antichrist, anyone against Jesus.
And advocate for marital rape.
These are my sex hot takes. If you get offended, I'm sorry, but they probably apply to you, and the Bible is offensive. Number 2, consent doesn't exist in marriage. I know this is going to piss a lot of people off, but when you get married, your body belongs to your husband, and your husband's body belongs to you. 2 become one, body, mind, soul, and spirit.
Among many other horrible and backwards beliefs. I know in this video I mostly focus on the patriarchal and misogynistic aspect of it, but there are quite a lot of aspects of the fundamental Christian and also of the alt-right, which a lot of Christians unfortunately associate with, that are very harmful to any minority group and are just harmful in general to anyone.
Thank you, Jesus, for today. Seriously. Your kingdom come, Lord. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, in America as it is in heaven, in the life of President Donald Trump as it is in heaven.
And we just want to take a moment and honor President Donald Trump. Lord, we thank you for choosing President Donald Trump as a vessel for your nation. As he carries the great responsibility of leading your people, may he rest in the knowledge that you, Lord, are the one who goes before him, and you will never leave him nor forsake him. President Donald Trump, we say that you will succeed and America will yet again prosper. May you manifest in the brightest of colors, and may your reign be righteous. In Jesus' mighty name.
Yes! Let's talk about the president-elect and the president-not-elect. Let's not beat around the bush. We voted for Trump.
God says, is a democratic Christian a true oxymoron in your opinion? Be honest. So, democratic Christian, is that an oxymoron? You know what an oxymoron is?
Yes. Meaning it can't work.
I'm a democratic Christian. Is that an I mean, he asked for our honest thoughts.
You can't be a Democrat and a Christian. Like, is that our thought?
And I'm not trying to minimize any of this or say that it's not important, but these are such heavy topics that I don't really want to just casually brush up on it. These are things that, if I talked about it in depth, would make their own hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long video, because there's so much to say about it. The alt-right belief that straight white men are superior to everyone, and that they're the only ones who seem to have a right to even live in this country anymore, is very freaking harmful. But that's the whole video in itself. So I want to make it very clear that I'm not dismissing that or ignoring it, but I just really specifically want to talk about the misogynistic and patriarchal aspect of it today, because those other topics really require their own in-depth videos that a lot of other people have covered in really great depth, but I would also be happy to cover in the future if you want to hear it.
I believe we have some power over who we love. It isn't something that just happens to a person.
I think the poets might disagree.
Well, I'm not a poet. I'm just a woman. And as a woman, there's no way for me to make my own money. Not enough to earn a living or to support my family. And if I had my own money, which I don't, that money would belong to my husband the moment we got married. And if we had children, they would be his, not mine. They would be his property. So don't sit there and tell me that marriage isn't an economic proposition, because it is. It may not be for you, but it most certainly is for me.
The idea that a woman should just sit back and let the man lead as though she were blindfolded is rooted in misogyny. The idea that princess treatment is not being able to speak or even function without the aid of your husband is frankly ludicrous. I hope the woman who made that video is either a world-class rage baiter, or she gets help to address her own internalized misogyny and demands better for herself. Because honestly, even her idea of princess treatment is basically just letting the man control you and do everything. That's not princess treatment, that's just misogyny. But in a patriarchal society where a woman's opinions and autonomy are valued less than a man's right to always be in charge, you end up in a place where you have to jump through hoops to justify being treated as the lesser, by calling it princess treatment or being in your divine feminine. There was this really popular Tumblr quote a while back that maybe you've seen, because I feel like everyone's seen every popular Tumblr quote, but if you haven't, I'll go through it. And mention how there's two types of respect. There's the basic respect you give everyone on the basis that you're all human beings, and then there is the respect that's above that you give an authority figure. And a lot of times when people say, if you don't respect me, I'm not going to respect you, what they're saying is, if you don't respect me as an authority figure, I won't respect you as a person. And that seems to be a very common and prevalent idea in a lot of fundamentalist marriages. The idea that a man would say, if you don't respect me as your authority, I'm not going to respect you as a person.
I always say love for a man is when you respect him. When you can respect your man, that's like the highest form of love for him. And then for women, it's feeling safe. It's
men and women are so different and we want to be loved in a different way. And so the sooner we realize that, like, because as women, I feel like we are like, why doesn't he love me? Why isn't he affectionate? Why isn't he showing it? It's because they are wired completely different from us. But the sooner that we realize that that's never going to happen, that we're wired differently and we have to learn how to dance with one another in these differences, that's when you can have peace in a relationship. I want to tell a little story just about this this scripture about how men want to be respected and women want to be loved. I realized that he wanted to be respected and I wanted to feel loved.
Yeah.
And when he didn't feel respected, he'd withhold love. And when I didn't feel loved, I wouldn't be as respectful.
Yeah.
If you want harmony in your relationship, you give respect to your man.
Yeah.
Because it's not based on a feeling. And the love isn't based on a feeling either.
Yeah.
I have to give my husband respect regardless of how I feel. And he has to give me love regardless of how he feels in the moment.
The idea of withholding love from someone like that is just so insane to me. And the fact that Girls Gone Bible is validating it by saying, oh, men are built different. Their brains are just wired different. Their brains are wired to disrespect women. And you're okay with that? This next clip is particularly frustrating. Melina Ciciotti is talking about rebuking her friend because she tried to vent to her about her husband, stopping her by saying, like, no, this isn't respectful to him, let's not be gossips. And this is so frustrating. Not allowing people to express their real genuine feelings about a situation by saying, like, oh, that's gossip, is how people get away with terrible things in the church for so long. Like, oh, that's gossip. First of all, talking about your own feelings in your own situation is just not gossip. I don't think you understand the definition of gossip. But if quote-unquote gossip is how people find out about genuine horrible behavior and are now informed and can now appropriately react or reprimand such behavior, then maybe people should gossip a little bit. I don't know.
If this is the first time that you're hanging out with someone, I don't know that it would be the most wise and discerning thing to rebuke them in that moment, unless you felt really called by the Spirit to do that. But this is something that I did with someone that I'm very close with, but she was starting to, and I was like, I can tell that this conversation will not be respectful or honoring to your husband. Can we switch conversations, or can you wait until you're able to do it in an honorable and respectful way? I would love to give you wisdom, but I want to make sure that we're not gossiping.
In this video, she doesn't give any context to what it is her friend is saying. She's just saying, I can tell this isn't respectful. Maybe we should wait until you can be respectful about this. And so I'm not saying she was ranting about her husband doing something really horrible, but like, this is a friend that is not going to feel comfortable coming to you if her husband in the future does do something horrible, because you were telling them, like, nope, I don't want to hear you say anything negative about your husband. It is not respectful. It is gossip. That is so messed up. I cannot tell you how many fundie women straight up say you should trust your husband even if he's wrong, because he's the leader. And if you're in a situation and you feel you know better, you should still defer to his judgment, because he's the man, he's the leader, and you have to submit to him. And if you do not submit to him and give him control in this situation, then he can't fulfill his religious duties, and basically your marriage will fall apart. It's very dramatic. Like, if you're in a situation and you recognize you are more equipped to handle it and to lead in this situation, you still can't do that, because it's up to the husband. And if everything fails because the husband messed up, well, then you just have to deal with that fallout, because that's biblical marriage. Rather than do what suits each individual's strengths, the role of leader is automatically on the man, and the role of being submissive is automatically on the woman, regardless of what their personalities are like.
These are some controversial rules in my marriage. To me, they're not controversial, but according to society, having rules at all is controversial and oppressive. But with the divorce rate being over 50%, I'm not going to listen to society. Number one, he is the head of the household, which means he is the final decision maker. Does this mean I'm not involved in conversations or decisions at all? No, but it does mean that at the end of the day, he has the final decision. Women, it is much easier to trust God and to trust your husband than to be a control freak.
I think something to keep in mind also is that a lot of these women have contended with these views their whole lives. They've been taught it's normal and good, so even if they do start to think, hey, maybe I don't like the system, maybe it's not good for me, they don't feel they have the right or authority to actually defy that system. So they gaslight themselves into thinking they actually enjoy it. And don't get me wrong, some of them might actually enjoy it. But from what I've seen, it's usually the women who are, girl bosses, who make a ton of money on their own, like from influencing, who say they love the man being the head of the household, all the while they're unmarried or married and the boss of their own household. Women like Girls Gone Bible are literally leading home ministries. These are unmarried women working outside the home, preaching the gospel and having their own careers. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with women having their own careers, own independent, unmarried lives. But this is exactly what a lot of fundamentalist circles believe you cannot do. But they circumvent their own rules when it's convenient for them, while still enforcing those rules on other people, while still enforcing those rules on you. And this is also where the demonization of feminism comes in. Because not only do you have to believe that this system you're living in is the right one in order to keep living in it, but you also have to believe that the alternative is not just impractical, but evil. Because if it wasn't wrong, if it wasn't morally wrong, a lot of people might flock to it. And you might end up with, God forbid, Christian feminists. Making women believe that being a feminist and wanting equality goes against God is a good way to keep women in line. Who wants to risk something like that when their salvation is on the line? I myself have personally had to contend with these feelings because I have been taught my whole life that you can't be both a feminist and a Christian. Because feminism is like its own religion, and you can't have more than one religion, right? You can't serve more than one God. So you have to choose between God and feminism. You have to choose between having your own rights and own autonomy and own beliefs, and also believing in God. And so for a long time when I was younger, I held feminist beliefs but refused to say the word feminist because I felt like I was doing something wrong. I would say like, oh yeah, I agree with a lot of feminism, but I'm not a feminist. I'm not a feminist. I'm a Christian. And this unfortunately is a big reason why a lot of women walk away from the church, because they've been taught their belief in God can't coexist with their desire to have rights. They've been taught that these two views cannot coexist, that you cannot have faith in God without letting a man control your life. And that really does break my heart that so many people are led away from the church, led away from God specifically, by being told that they can't be Christians and, care about their own individual freedoms. We have free will, our own people, but a lot of our own theology doesn't back that up. And I'm also not here whatsoever to demonize anyone who has left the church, and please let me make that clear. I'm not judging anyone. Although my path is different, I still believe in God. I understand what it means to be so hurt by individuals and the beliefs of the church that you decide to leave the whole thing altogether. I do hope that those who turn away can come back to it with a healthier relationship, without all these man-made rules that are meant to keep you in line. But if you don't, that's your choice. I very much believe in God, but I'm not here to force that down anyone's throat. You are welcome here no matter your faith. If you have never believed in God a day in your life, you are still more than welcome here, and you don't have to convert to him just because I believe in him. But it does break my heart when people feel they have to leave behind the faith they've known their whole life because they just no longer feel that they are allowed to be themselves or even a real respected human being within it.
I just feel like women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts, and they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty. And I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it.
And I myself have had to take a hard look at my own faith and decide which parts I believe and what I don't, which parts are backed up biblically and which parts were just made by men so they can enforce whatever power structure suited them. And in that time I've decided that I don't want to conform to patriarchal ideas. I don't think they benefit anyone, not even men. Shocking, I know, but even men can be victims of the patriarchy.
Most people commit suicide are men. Most people who work in dangerous workplaces are men. Most people who fight in war are men.
And who set that system up?
So you might be thinking, why even address all this if you're a Christian who doesn't hold these beliefs? And how does most of what you say even tie back to the princess treatment lady? Well, unfortunately, the tradwife to alt-right pipeline is surprisingly common and popping up all over the place. I think it's important as a Christian to acknowledge that, so maybe I can prevent other Christians from falling down it. And while some of these things might seem stupid but ultimately harmless, it isn't. You see a woman wanting princess treatment and think, what's that got to do with me? It's important to understand the prevalence and the dangers of the pipeline. Because the tradwife, cottagecore, clean girl persona is scarily close to alt-right beliefs. There's not a lot of distance between those two things. First, your FYP is full of princess treatment and cottagecore, and then it's blatantly tradwife content.
Let me give you a break from the boss babe propaganda for a second, okay? Not telling you what to do, just showing you the possibilities. It is 3:52 p.m. on a random Tuesday afternoon. I've got focaccia bread proofing, and then I did just make homemade cheese, because why not? It's so much better for you, and it's fun. It's really fun to make. I've got Candace playing on the TV. You watch whatever show or podcast you like. And then I'm gonna go to a Pilates class, come back, make dinner, spend time with my husband. Why were we told we needed to grind and do the same jobs as men?
And then suddenly you find yourself on the side of the internet that thinks marital rape doesn't exist and that no-fault divorce should be abolished. I don't know if any of you saw it or even remember it, but a while back a woman got murdered by her ex-husband. I'm not sure how much I can even say on this app. But I think the reason this case particularly blew up is because she had posted a TikTok a few weeks before He killed her talking about their divorce and how suddenly her husband had become really cooperative and wasn't really putting up a fight with their divorce, and she was really shocked and happy that he was making things go smoothly, and she seemed very happy to finally be getting out of that situation. And then suddenly he flipped a switch and killed her. I think it was obvious to most people after that that the reason he suddenly became amiable was because he had already planned on killing her before the divorce proceedings had been finalized. And I also think he might have killed himself afterwards. That might have been a different case. A lot of men murder their wives. And it's very scary and very tragic, but when I saw the article on the cesspool that is Twitter, obviously all the replies were absolutely horrendous. There were hundreds and hundreds of men and even some women claiming that this was all her fault. That if no-fault divorce didn't exist, she wouldn't have been able to leave and none of this would have happened. Yes, they were saying it was her fault that he killed her. They were saying that nothing was lost when she died, but it's sad that he decided to take his own life afterwards because he didn't deserve it. That the wife murderer didn't deserve it. They really truly were asserting that it was better that a woman stay married to a man who wanted to kill her than to divorce him, and that the only reason he killed her is because of a no-fault divorce, and that his death was more tragic than hers because she initiated the divorce. That her life had no meaning because she wanted to divorce a man. Now listen, not being able to divorce an abusive man doesn't stop abuse from happening, and it doesn't stop men from killing their wives. Now, I don't know if he was particularly abusing her within their marriage, but considering what happened when she tried to divorce him, I really wouldn't be shocked to find out that he was physically or emotionally violent. The pipeline from wanting to be into a divine feminine to living under a patriarchal rule that doesn't care about your own well-being is very, very real and very, very dangerous. I say this because I want women to be safe and happy and healthy in their lives. And you know what? Here's the thing. I fully believe that even if he wasn't abusive, he wasn't crappy, and she just decided she didn't want to be with him anymore, she should be allowed to leave. Why should she have to stay in a marriage she literally does not want to be in anymore? Crazy, I know. You shouldn't stay in marriages that are harming you. I really believe that. I believe that oftentimes the only reason a lot of these religious influencers stay together isn't because they are happy or in love. It's because they just believe that they would be sinning by finding something else, by being independent. And that's really disheartening to see, because I don't believe you're improving your walk with God by staying in your marriage with someone who doesn't respect you, who weighs you down, that makes you mentally fight every single day. How can you improve in your walk with God when you're like fighting just to be a person, you know?
There have been times when I've done something or said something to Morgan that's been so hurtful, and in the back of my mind I'm like, oh, it's nice knowing that she can't go anywhere.
Okay, that doesn't give you the right to say mean things
I
to your
feel
wife.
guilty about it. If there wasn't that commitment, you say stuff and heart cracked down the middle, you go your own ways.
It's also worth noting how a lot of these funny influencers seem to just not enjoy being together. They bicker all the time, even on camera, and they don't cut it out. They fight all the time, and the relationships are really obviously dysfunctional to anyone outside of it. But they're just so used to it being their relationship that they really think this is normal, and all the problems and fights that they have are just a normal part of a relationship. You will fight, you will disagree, but should that be an everyday thing? Should you always be like at odds with your partner? No.
Okay, I've shared a couple times on here, but never with you, my thoughts on like fighting in marriage, fair fighting, all of that stuff, which I'm very passionate about, and I feel like you are too. And so, I mean, we only have like a couple fights a day, right?
Right. Yes. She jokes.
Alright, I hear what you're saying.
Just move on to something else. You just act like I never give you any loving. It's fine. It's fine. We need to move on. It's fine.
We did not literally find any hope or closure to that little scenario.
And if you've seen Paul and Morgan's videos, you know Paul is consistently using Morgan's pain for content, and anytime they get into a fight or something bad happens, he's shifting the blame onto her. It's really heartbreaking to see. She will be in her house raising their 2 kids by herself and crying on camera about how alone she feels. Meanwhile, Paul is out playing pickleball, living his best life. This particular sect of Christianity loves to teach that empathy is toxic and self-love is narcissistic, but yet they also want to be loved unconditionally and pampered. They consistently contradict their own viewpoints in almost everything they do. They say they serve God because he's loving, and he is, but then they demonize love and caring for one another and basic human empathy. You serve a God of unconditional love, and yet you make your love so ridiculously conditional and circumstantial. I thought we were supposed to be Christ-like here. Aren't we supposed to follow his lead? Doesn't he teach us to love other people? To be kind and compassionate? To do our best to live peaceably with all men? All that stuff? Something I mentioned earlier is the idea that marriage is so perfect and it's held so highly in Christian circles. But contradictory to that statement, some Christians also often believe that marriage is and should be incredibly hard. A lot of these influencers often talk about how the first years of their marriage were so difficult and how even they thought about getting divorced and they weren't happy. I mean, from day one, even on their literal honeymoons, they were struggling with various things. I mean, Morgan was crying on her wedding night and also throwing up on her wedding day, but I'm sure that means nothing. I don't know about you, but I feel like for the average person, the first few years, and especially the first few months of your marriage, are literally the honeymoon phase. That's when everything should be going right. You should be happy. You should be so lovey-dovey. And the hard stuff comes later, right? I mean, I'm not married. I don't know. But I feel like it's called the honeymoon phase for a reason. Maybe the reason it's so difficult for them is because they've rushed into marriages while hardly knowing each other or even being prepared for marriage. But who's to say, really?
I'm like, bro, I barely know you.
I think a simple solution to a lot of this is don't put too much pressure on yourself to find a spouse. It's fine if you don't get married early on or even at all. Don't box yourself into rigid gender roles where you have to act a certain way and take on a certain role in your relationship because of your genitalia or the way you were born. Be the kind of person that works for you and your life and your relationship. Look at your relationship and be able to say, I am better in this area, so I will take the lead in this area. You're better in this area, so you take the lead in this area. Not just, you're the man, so you do this. I'm the woman, so I do this. Do what works best for you in your life, and don't feel the need to conform to such rigid stereotypes that really hurt everyone involved within it. And keep an eye out for the pipeline. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how these very strict gender roles affect anyone who isn't a straight cisgender person. Obviously, this can be difficult enough for someone in a heterosexual relationship, but if you don't fit into that mold, it can be even worse for you because you can often be outcast or ostracized by the church for not fitting into those very specific roles. But even if you aren't a part of the church, even if you aren't religious, these things can still affect you, whether it's because you used to be and you're dealing with the aftermath, or because Christians often expect even those who are not religious to conform to their very specific beliefs. So it's important to acknowledge how all of this can affect anyone who isn't straight or cisgender, or even someone who is but doesn't present that way, because when you enforce such strict roles, even someone in your own community who deviates from that can be demonized as not man enough or not woman enough.
Dante Bowe wearing a skirt on stage with jeans under it.
Oh, Dante did a skirt?
It was a kilt, but
It's
a skirt.
Yeah, right. Really pushing the boundaries.
You know, it to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people, it's like, this is such a silly topic to be talking about. Who cares? His daughter's paint his nails. Whoop you stinking do.
And then he wears them out.
Yeah, and he wears it
obviously.
out and performs and leads worship with his nails painted.
Oh, does he?
I mean, I'm assuming, yeah.
I don't
he's
know.
Got leftover nail polish on stage.
Wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know. He might say, I wouldn't feel good doing that. I have no clue. I don't know. So I don't want to add to what we know, which is we've seen him in a car with his nails done, and then he makes this video, Brandon Lake.
But I do think that there is a bigger thing here, and someone commented, I think, on his reel, and I thought it was interesting. So this lady says, "It is so amazing that you spend time with your girls. What a beautiful thing. It's important also to teach them the difference between male and female actions. We never had to think about that when we were growing up because but we have to now because the culture we live in is trying to erase the gender lines."
Ooh.
And I thought that was really good, and that's kind of why I'm like, yeah, let's talk about this, because it is, like, as believers, in this day and age that we're living in, it's like we do, sadly, have to think about the most innocent little thing, like your daughter's painting your fingernails. Like, we see where, like, you know, maybe not addressing these things has gotten us, or letting your little boy play in dresses for years and now he's thinking he's a female because you didn't make it clear what the gender roles are.
For I can declare I'm a woman, I can try to live like a woman, act like a woman, I'm a woman. Is that womanhood? I mean, the culture we live in would say, yes, it is. Anyone can declare to be whatever they want, and we all must affirm that identity in them. But when we look to God's word, we see something very opposite. And if you're not a believer, or maybe you've really bought into this message of culture, you might think, well, God is unloving. How can God draw such black and white lines? It is actually the opposite of what you might be thinking. It's because he's loving, because he's our creator, because he has a good purpose and plan and intention for each of our lives. And so he's the one who decides, because he designed us. So he defines us. The very first attribute we see for the woman, Eve, when God created her, is that she was made to be feminine. She was created to be a woman full of estrogen, fertility, and femininity. We're so different than men, like from our makeup.
We are Bible-believing Christians who see that God made male and female and said that it was good. And so to go against what God calls good and to call someone by their preferred pronouns is just something that we can't do in good conscience.
It's confusion to a new level. And the idea of just...
You can't be a they, them people. You can't. I'm sorry. Pick one or the other, at least.
Not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? It's not confusing at all. It's only confusing if you love yourself and love the world more than you love God, which is true of these two individuals, sadly.
What she is talking about in this clip is not the mercy to which Christians are called. She is talking about disorder and chaos and sin, which God and Christians are in opposition to. When she says, for example, transgender children are scared, well, that opposes the very first chapter of the first book of the Bible. Genesis 1:27 is very clear that God made us in his image, male and female. Therefore, it is not possible to declare yourself a gender that you are not biologically. She is here promoting the butchering of the bodies, of the genitalia of children in the name of love and mercy. No, that is satanic.
I don't share these clips to dishearten you, only to show the effects of the alt-right pipeline. First you say you want to be in your divine feminine and you want a masculine man, and then you end up calling people satanic for acknowledging that transgender people exist. And the pipeline doesn't end there, but I'm not going to show clips of where you end up. I think everyone here is familiar with neo-Nazism and what that particular group spouts, and I think you can get the idea of what they believe without me having to show you those horrendous and awful clips of what they believe. This video has been heavy enough. And like I said, I am not here to depress you, only to make you aware and vigilant, and to encourage you that not everyone will fall into this alt-right pipeline that so many of us are worried about. I'm an example of that. I grew up in a closed circuit. I was homeschooled with a Christian curriculum. The only time I left my house was to attend church. I spent the majority of my life with either none or limited internet access, and I didn't fall victim to it. This world and the people in it are not a lost cause. This might seem contradictory to the tone of this video, but I don't want you to fall victim to the doomerism mentality. I don't want to leave you downtrodden. I don't want you to think all hope is lost. This is a very specific sect of Christianity that I wanted to draw attention to, but it doesn't represent every Christian or the world at large. But if we don't call out this behavior, this mindset, it could become that way. Just keep fighting for what you know is right, and everything will be okay. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. Okay, I have so much to say on this subject, and I really could dive so much deeper into this topic, and deeper into patriarchal marriages, and purity culture, and submission, and all of that. I mean, I've honestly barely scratched the surface of it all, but this script is already getting incredibly long, and I'm trying not to have another incredibly long video just yet. I'm trying to balance out my page short and long, so there will be really extensive deep dives further on, but I'm just trying to balance it out right now. And as you can see, I'm getting really bad at talking. My voice is so scratchy, so I'm about to end it here so I can go take a sip of water. I hope this video was informative and interesting and hopefully helpful. Maybe if you're not a Christian, this video provided some interesting insight, and maybe if you are a Christian, this prompts you to look at some of your own beliefs and perceptions under a microscope and go, yeah, that's not very Christ-like, is it? And I'm sorry if this video didn't appeal to you. I'm not really used to making religious content or anything critical of the church, but I've also never been super bold in my faith. I've never wanted to make anyone uncomfortable. I still don't. And I don't want to force things on people that they don't want. I also have spent a long time being afraid to form my own ideas and have opinions that differ from my family. So Even though this may seem like a very tame video to you, this is actually very scary for me to make in the event it ends up on the FYP of any of my family members. So don't snitch on me. I just think if we're afraid to stir the pot as Christians, we're going to let a lot of really bad things slide, and that is not Christ-like at all. So even if this wasn't informative or interesting, at least I got a lot of things off my chest. Hopefully there's someone else out there who's maybe in a similar situation who finds comfort in knowing that there's people out there who feel the same way you do, who've been through what you've been through, and it's all going to be okay. There is still hope. I know it really seems like the world is becoming more and more bigoted each and every day, especially here in America right now, but I just want you to know that there are people out there who are good, who have love in their hearts, not hate in their hearts, who want the best for people, and I really just want to encourage that, and I want to encourage just making sure you treat other people well, make sure you're not falling down any dangerous pipelines, to be critical even of your own worldview. This isn't the easiest subject to talk about for me, but I'm really enjoying making all of these videos. I hope I can continue to make them in the future, and if you enjoy them and want me to continue to make them in the future, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, maybe share a copy link, because that really helps with the algorithm. Like always, my Ko-Fi is going to be linked in the description. I have prints available for free on there, and I'm working on getting more of my art prints available. I even have a video I'm working on that I will be showing you guys some of my artwork. Maybe if you're interested. You can also leave a donation on my Ko-Fi, but there is absolutely no pressure whatsoever. You're more than welcome to just take the prints and go. But if you do donate, I really appreciate that. It's really hard to put into words just how much I appreciate it and how much it's helping me, the donations I've received. So thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. If you've made it this far, I can't tell you how much it means to me. But yeah, I think that's all I have for now. So that's all, folks. See you next Monday.